All right, so we just looked at an example that uses an API that supports CORS, right? And that is by far the simplest solution, right? But let's look at another one. If your API does not support CORS, right, or doesn't support JSON-P, or any of the client-side access to these APIs from the browser, all right? If they don't support it, that's fine. You can still use that API, but you need a proxy, right? You need to send your request not directly to the other domain. You need to go to your domain, right? Because that's where the browser just allows you to do. Talk to your original domain. So here's one API that doesn't support CORS. It's the Oxford Dictionary, where you can search for words in any language. You can give it a particular word, a language word, and it'll give you all sorts of definitions, whether it's a verb or noun, and different examples on how to use it in different phrases. Does also translation, right, from one language to another language. It's pretty powerful. It just doesn't support CORS or JSON-P. Right? So the only way to communicate with this is through a proxy, right? Through a server, right? The server needs to send out the HTTP request, not you, right? So your Angular application is going to talk to your server, which is going to expose a web service endpoint, right? And that web service endpoint, the only thing it's going to do is just going to massage your request and just send it over again to this API. That API is going to respond, right? Your server is going to build that response into a body and then send it back to your client. Right? It's just going to be like an echo, right? It's echoing this back and forth. All right. All right. So to do that, I have here an example. Where is it? I have here an example of the Oxford Dictionary proxy. All right, let's go over this real quick. Right here I have as a reference. If you want to take a look at the documentation for this particular API, you can go there. So to do this, we're still using the app, right? That this is the same app that we've been using all along, right? Express, but we want to be able to send requests ourselves from our server. It'll be our server who sends the HTTP request, not the browser, right? The browser will send requests here, right? And then this one will then take that request and send it over to Oxford. Then Oxford is going to respond to our server, Node.js server, and our Node.js server is going to respond back to our Angular application. Make sense? Okay. So this is the library that we're going to be using. In particular, this Oxford library needs to be uses HTTPS. Yours might use just plain old HTTP, right? But if it uses HTTPS, you can use HTTPS. We have two libraries available, just plain old HTTP or HTTPS. They're both available as native Node.js libraries to generate an HTTP. This is equivalent an Angular asking for the $sign HTTP service. Yes? Right? Here, you require the library. There it is. We have the HTTP library. Query string is another library that allows you to parse or generate query strings, right? Because Oxford, the way it works through their documentation, you can pass all sorts of query parameters. You can pass all sorts of query parameters. Okay? And so this library just makes it easier to generate these query parameters. This is the API that we are exposing to our Angular application. So our Angular application is sending queries here, right? It's sending a $sign HTTP.get to here, to our server. And we know how to do that, right? That was last week's assignment, right? So we know how to do that. We're going to pass from the Angular application, we're going to pass the language and the word, right? And we're going to run this function search query. Okay? We need to, our particular API requires an API a key and an ID, an app ID and an app key. I'm sure yours also needs that. Okay? It's usually a good practice not to provide the keys in the source code. Right? Instead, it's better to add them as environment variables, right? And you know how to do that as well, right? We did that for MongoDB, right? We stored some of that information on environment variables. So there they are. So I stored all three in the environment variable. The base URL. Yes.
But I know for some of these, like if you're making a request, like on the client, you can't hide the key. Is there like anywhere?
Usually, if they don't, usually, well, I'm not using that here, but typically these APIs, in addition to these API keys, they'll give you a token that they will time out after an hour or after a few hours. It'll time out, so that even if you have these keys out in the clear, right, you also need the token, right, which will time out. And basically, what you do is that you send the query, it'll respond saying, "Oh, sorry, your token is outdated," right? Then you have to do another query asking for a new token, and store that token either in a database or in session, right? And just use that token until it fails, until it times out, right? So in that case, then the key could be in the clear. You still need a token that will expire. All right, so let's continue. Our search query is going to respond to our Angular application with a word and a language passed in as path parameters, yes, and then it's going to use an Oxford search query, which is down here, right? It's just going to pass those two things to the Oxford search query, which is actually going to do the HTTP request. Okay, the HTTP request is right here. There it is, https.get. See that? This is what generates the GET request, right? This is the host, right? This is the where the API oxforddictionaries.com, right? That's the host name. The path. This is the base URL. That's the base URL that the API will document. In our case, if you go to the API and you go all the way to the bottom, it'll tell you what the base URL is. Right? That means that all the queries need to be prepended with that URL, /API, /version1, and then the URL, right, the path. Okay? So there it is. So we are appending that, and we are using this query right here, entries, language, and then word, which happens to be the very first one right here. See that? Entries, language, and word. See that? Okay? And here's a couple examples. If you type in a particular word, here's the word ace, or hello, just hello, and you run it here, try it out. It goes out, and here's the response. The response is a pretty big object, which you can select, maybe. It's a pretty big object that if we put it in JSON editor, you see what it looks like. It's so there's some metadata about the result set, right? Who provided it? Also the results. There's only one result. Hello, right? That's for the word hello. There's only one meaning, I guess. There are 3 lexical entries. One entry is the gives you a pronunciation. That's pretty cool. It even gives you some MP3 files on how the word is pronounced. Also gives you a lexical category, whether it's a noun, a verb. In this case, it's an interjection. Gives you, what else does it give you? Entries. It gives you meanings, I'm guessing. Etymology, sense. These are definitions, examples on how to use it. You have different definitions. So this is used as a greeting or to begin a telephone conversation. Okay. Some examples. One example, hello there, Katie. Subsenses, meaning other meanings of the word, right? Other definitions, examples. Used to express surprise. Used as a cry to attract someone's attention. So anyway, so this is the object that comes back from what would come back, right? Also, notice that the app the IDs and the keys need to be passed in as headers. So there it is. We can pass the headers, right? Notice that we're saying that we're accepting JSON, meaning we want the response as JSON. Some APIs, you can choose what response you want, whether you want XML, whether you want JSON or a CSV file or whatever, or just a plain old text file, or even HTML. You can ask for how you want to accept it. In this case, we're asking that we want the response in JSON. We're providing the API key and the ID. So that's to configure the GET. The second argument to the GET is the success function, right? If the response is successful, it will call this callback and provide you the response right here. This is on the server, right? This is all working on the server. We still need to, send it back to the Angular client, right? Who's still waiting for a response, right? So anyway, so this the function here, this response object. It's used to build the response as it's being streamed from the server that you're sending the query to. Okay, the communication not necessarily is going to come back on one single go. Right? It might be that the server will split up the response in many little bits and pieces. Okay, so the response allows you to listen for if there's a new piece, right? Is there another piece to the response, right? And you need to build it up. Here, the way we're building it up is with a local variable body, and we're listening for bits of data that are coming back from in the buffer, if it's buffered, right? And then we're building the body here. When there's no more data coming from the server, we'll be notified saying that's it. This is the end of the message. There's no more pieces in the buffer. And what we do is that we have the body as plain text. We're going to parse it into JSON. Right? We know it's JSON, right? And we resolve the promise. Here, notice that we're using the Q promise library, the one we installed. I think it was yesterday or the day before, right? For database access, right? This is the same exact Q library, but here we're doing it by hand, right? We are creating a promise, and we are returning the promise right here, right? Meaning that whoever's calling us right here with the Oxford search query, this comes back with a promise, meaning, hold on, right? I'll let you know in a minute. Register a callback function that I will call at some point when everything is done. So that's this promise. This promise object that I'm returning here has that then function in it, okay, which allows us to register. So the way the responses work is that once I return the promise, I can either resolve the promise, right, and so the success function will be called, or I can reject the promise. So resolve the promise meaning I am fulfilling the promise of calling you, right? Or I am saying, sorry, I can't fulfill the promise, something went wrong. In the resolve, if I resolve, I can pass the data in the resolve, and that's what's going to be called right here. Right? This function will be invoked if I resolve, and the data that I pass in the resolve, that's the data that will be passed to you. And that's what we're going to send back to the client, right, to the Angular client. And then, or I can reject, and then the error will be sent back right here in this function, and then we can send a 404. That makes sense, right? So that's on the server side. You should be able to take this example, right, and and massage it for your own purposes, for your own, whatever API out there doesn't support JSON-P or plain old coarse. Okay, all right, this is a proxy. So let's build a really tiny Angular application around this, all right? But I mean, it's pretty trivial, right? The only thing that it needs to do is be able to call this function. That's all, right? Let's see. So this is Oxford service. We need to register it in our server, and I believe I did already. There it is. Yes, I did register it. So that service is ready to go. Right. So let's write here a lecture. In a lecture here on the public, let's create a little Angular application that can talk to our server-side proxy. So we'll have here, let's call this Oxford, or maybe proxy. I'll call it proxy so that you know how to find it. Okay. All right. So let's do here index and let's see. Let's grab. I'm going to copy some of the stuff we had earlier from here. Let's grab the link here, app.js and that. All right. Okay. We got that. Let's paste that in here. There we go. We got now. We got Bootstrap and Angular. Yeah, there they are. We're gonna declare here as an ng app. We'll call it we'll call it proxy app. Again, so this so that you can take a look at it later on your own on how is that we built this, right? Let's put a little controller here. So div class, and this will be container fluid, and this will be a controller, ng controller, and we'll call it proxy controller as model. Okay, let's create that controller in app.js. I'm just going to copy some of this here. So I'm just going to copy some of this, and I'm going to put it in my new app.js. So app.js, and in here I'm going to paste that. Our controller is called what? Well, our app is called the proxy app, right? So let's copy that into our new app.js. There it is. And our controller is now called the proxy controller, right? So let's put that in there. There we go. Okay, so there's our controller. Let's make sure that these two guys are talking to one another. Let's just say something like var model this model.hello, right? And on the index, let's just render model.hello, just to make sure that these guys are talking to one another. Let's navigate there, see if they're there. Let's see. Proxy index, and they're not talking to one another. Let's see. We get an error. We're not even getting an error. Why is this not working? Model as model. Where? In the controller. Proxy model. Ooh. Obviously, it would help if I would say actually hello, right? Hello from proxy controller. There we go. Okay, so the two are talking to one another. So basically, we want to see if we can hit our local query, right? Which we have right here. This is it, right? We want to hit this endpoint, right? So from our controller, we can just say $HTTP get and that URL. There it is, right? And the language, let's stick with English. Let's stick with just plain old English and with hello, right? And this is going to come back, and we're going to render word. So function render word, and we'll say model.word is equal to this is the response, right? So this is going to be response.data. And in the proxy, the HTML, we're just going to render the actual word. Okay? So it'll be some huge JSON object coming from our server. So let's restart. Let's make sure, and let's refresh. And there it is, right? So this is this object, right? This object, if you notice in the network, came from our local call, right? It's coming from our local call. We never went out our domain, right? We never actually went to Oxford for this, right? From our browser. From our browser's point of view, we only went to our local domain. It is our server who went out to Oxford, right? buffered all the data, generated the JSON, and then responded back to us. See that? Right. So basically, we've circumvented the security measures, right, by just going back to our domain, right, and having our domain making the call for us, right. That's why we refer to it as a proxy server, right. It is just an intermediate step to where we really want to go, right, and it's just echoing that information for us. Everybody okay? All right. So basically we've done three. Right? We looked at a Flickr, which uses JSON-P. Right? We looked at using cores, right, which is the easiest way, right? And then we just looked at using proxies, which is one of the more complicated ones, right? Obviously, if it's not JSON, it can get a little more complicated, right? If it's XML, then you can use an XML parser. There's quite a few libraries that will convert back and forth between JSON and XML, and so that you can then render it here for JavaScript. All right, awesome.